I'm
That's
well.
great.
Good to see you.
Wonderful to see you. I'm super excited to get to meet you and connect with you and dive into your amazing wisdom and share that with our audience. Yeah, so just wanting to really welcome you to the Limitless Potential podcast,
Thank
and
you.
it's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for the amazing opportunity just to share maybe something helpful for people.
Definitely, definitely. And you look beautiful, by the way.
Oh, thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's one of those things I can say, I had absolutely nothing to do with.
I love it. That's amazing. And Katie, I would absolutely, I've been following your work for a few years now, and just constantly am reminded and getting insights and ahas and sharing that with my clients and
I'm,
our
s-
audience.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
That's a
And
life. That's a
I
life
want
worth living.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think that's what your work really wakes us all up to. So I wondered if you might, obviously, I know part of your story, but I wondered if you might take us back to a bit of the story about how the work began for you and share that with those of us out there who aren't totally familiar with your story. Maybe this is very new to them, and love to dive into a piece of that story about how it all started and where you were in your life at that point.
Well, I was very depressed, clinically depressed, and almost a decade, more or less. I don't know. It was hard, and and I was lying on the floor one morning, just in a dead sleep, and a cockroach crawled over my foot, and I opened my eyes, and all the suffering was gone, all the depression was gone, and and I saw in that moment that when I believed my thoughts, I suffered. And when I didn't believe them, and that's what that moment showed me, there was no suffering. And that was the difference between suffering and no suffering. So I've come to see that this is true for every human being. When we believe our thoughts, we suffer. When we don't believe our thoughts, we don't suffer. And I'm talking about the thoughts that go against the heart. And when we're in touch with our true nature, which is what my work's all about, this interview, everything I do, it's about just passing on to others that there is a simple way, and it's a practice I call the work, and it's inquiry, and a great a great mind said that an unquestioned mind is not worth living. And I've come to see that this is absolutely true. I think it was Socrates. But in my experience and the experience of millions of people, it's really so. We question what we believe, or we have to live out of that. And if we're suffering, we can actually identify what we're thinking and believing and question it.
And this is what I think is so beautiful about the work is it's so simple and it's so profound. And part of what I've wanted to really dive into with you, I recently heard you speaking, a recording of you, I think back from 2015, and you were talking into an experience you had where you were entering into the prison system and having these conversations with some men in the prison system. And you said that it had been years since you'd left the world of duality, and it had been years since you'd actually had a negative thought. And what I wanted to sort of dive in, that was really profound for me because I have been living with a belief that we cannot control the thoughts that enter our mind, but we can create the space to question them and choose something more empowering. But I wanted you to maybe clarify what you mean. Like, how do we get to a point where we don't even have the negative thought to question?
Well,
If I've understood it right.
actually, the work is meditation. It's a practice, and I invite people, to this daily practice. Whereas we identify those thoughts that are so depressing or enemy making and sad making, and we question them. And I really don't recall your question. Could you isolate it?
Of course, of course. So I wanted to know, so I have a perspective of, or I have had that where it's like
the trick is, if I can go back a moment from what I heard from you, I can respond this way. It's not about getting rid of my thoughts. It's about understanding my thoughts. Because if I don't understand my thoughts, I can't understand people in my world, my children, my grandchildren, my husband, myself. So if I question those thoughts, they lose their power. And actually, let's say if I had the thought, this is very radical. I don't know if I can go here or not, but
go for it.
Well, it would be like this person doesn't care about me. If I had that thought, then that's not depressing because I've questioned it. I have an understanding within me. So I would celebrate that person is thinking for themselves. They have a right to their own conclusions. They have a right to believe what they think. They don't know me. So it's not about me. If they believe they don't like me, for example, that's about them and what they're believing about me. So that is not personal with me. So if someone says, I don't like you at all, then I stay connected. I don't separate from that person. I understand. So they don't care about me ceases to be a thought in my head that I even want to get rid of because it ceases to be a negative experience. So that is a very profound way to live out of life, where the only thing in this world that can hurt me is what I'm thinking and believing about me, about you, about my world. So that gives me 100% control and responsibility for my world, for my life, for me. And I can tell you it's a much kinder world because I know what hell is. I came out of that 10-year spiral by some state of grace, and I didn't ask for it. Maybe I did because I was screaming at some point, "Take me home." And on that floor, I received a great gift, and because I pass it on, it continues to expand my mind, this wonderful mind. I have a new book coming out this month or next month. Anyway, it's on my website. People can go to Amazon and find it. What I'm describing really is a mind at home in itself. And that's the name of the book, A Mind at Home with Itself. And it doesn't, that is a mind that is no longer at war with itself. So to understand what you think is peace, and to understand what you think is to understand what everyone says in a way that doesn't separate me. It's a fearless state of mind and a fearless life, as far as I know, and I'm very open to whatever life brings, but so far, so good.
Yeah. And I absolutely, I'm really taking all of this in and just feeling into it, and it's already expanding my mind as well. And I love that. And
well, there's no prohibition. There's no prohibition in it. There's no wall. There's nothing to do except take our problems to paper and question them. And of course, directions for that are on thework.com, and it's free. And anyone can do this if their mind is open to it.
Definitely. And something that just popped into my mind was really asking you about identity, because I hear from what you're saying is that ability to disidentify from our thoughts, and that is what creates that freedom, so that we're not triggered, we're not at war with the people in our lives, ourselves, and all things. And I wondered what, because I'm just trying to get my mind around
Yeah.
it, that whole concept of what, like, how do you see yourself? If we don't identify with, our thoughts, which is our kind of consciousness, then what is our identity?
Well, we're not left with much, and we're left with a lot. Because if my husband says I love you, then what he's thinking and about what he's thinking, believing about me, is the person I am to him. So my children the same, my friends the same, people in my life the same. What they're thinking and believing about me becomes my identity within them. And if they don't care about me, that would be painful. If they do, and because the me isn't personal, and if they do care about me, that is a wonderful thing. It's the ability to care, and again, not personal with me. But all my identities are held as a separate structure for everyone that knows me. So why would I bother with identity when I have so many? It's like I'm unnecessary as far as creating an identity because there's so many out there. Now, if someone says, Katie, you hurt my feelings, I immediately would say, oh my goodness, let's discuss that. I don't want that in my life. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, so tell me specifically. So we could talk that through, and that grows me. Because if I have said or done something to cause another person harm, they wake me up to it. And in that, I'm aware of what I was not aware of prior to that. So there's no one in this world that does not serve my this beautiful mind to expand, this mind at home in itself to expand. But it really is no identity necessary. But if I look, sweetheart, if I look to, it's like this morning I was sitting in the kitchen with Stephen, my husband, and I see that in my mind's eye. You probably saw me in the kitchen with my husband just then, and you didn't even have to meet my husband, but you can see an image of my kitchen, and you've never seen my kitchen, but you were there. So when I see that in my mind's eye, when I'm discussing that with you, I look at that's not my identity. That is an image of that is an image. It's not real. So I am the one speaking to you here now, and that's all the identity I need to hold. When a mind is at home with itself, no identity is necessary. It is just wide open to everything, because that's what love is. It's an experience. And so anything that would interfere with that, in my life, I question it. And I invite the world to that, because suffering is optional.
Wow, I love that. And, something that sort of came to mind there, was really a question around being intentional. So if we question our thoughts and we don't identify with our thoughts, and we ultimately want to stay open to the experience of everything that happens in this moment without identifying with it, and that ultimately is love, then how do we decide when to be more intentional? Is it outside, in terms of
living that way is nothing I could do. It's nothing that I could decide or do. It's what I'm left with. It's the consciousness I'm left with, the enlightenment I'm left with after inquiry. So this is not something I could control. This is not something, again, that I could do. It's something that it's the way my mind works. after inquiry, all the inquiry that I've done in my life. And, just sitting in that practice of awareness until finally, not just me, but a lot of people, it's ongoing because the inquiry is alive in them. The practice is alive in them. And it's not just sitting in the mornings meditating on, he betrayed me, is it true?
So would you say that the inquiry is a way of being?
It's, we're all being. It's just, are we happy in it? Now, the thing you may be looking for that I'm sensing is how can we have a better life, a more creative, fabulous life? Every time we question our mind, it's like less space junk is out of the way. This fake news, in other words, the things we find that are not true for each of us individually, ourself, the one inquiring. But when we start, it clears the head full of junk, full of fake news. And in that, the choices we make are brilliant. They come out of knowledge and pure creativity, and they're doable. They're not beyond us. And the directions are all there. That's knowledge. But all these things we're thinking and believing that create the false self, I, me, I, is the clutter that keeps us from the awareness of all that knowledge that is always there. So through inquiry, our choices become clearer. And I have come to see beyond a doubt that this universe is friendly, and wisdom wouldn't take me. Wisdom's so clear you don't even have to second guess it. Wisdom is wisdom, but it's how to give it enough space to reveal itself to us, because it's ready. It's just waiting for an open mind, and I can certainly attest to that. My life does.
Oh, and I love the concept of the false self. Would you say that that's what people refer to as the ego and just the chatter?
Yeah, the ego.
The unquestioned thought?
Yeah, the ego.
Yeah.
And what we're believing creates the ego. So when we question what we're believing, it sheds its skin like a snake, only at a much quicker rate, and it just leaves us enlightened to what is true and what is not for ourselves. This is personal work.
And I really I love that you said that you've come to believe that you've come to experience that it is a friendly universe. And when you speak into that, do you mean, because so many of us are suffering because we're so attached to these memories and these projections of our past and how bad that was, and it's this projection. And do you mean to say that we can find the positivity in that, or do you mean to say that it no longer exists?
Well, what I mean to say by that, I think that is really, really valuable, is just to identify what we were thinking and believing in those situations that just haunt us, and to write them down and to just get quiet and sit in the practice. And again, I'm all over YouTube and thework.com, how to do the work, absolutely free.
And that's a process that I've used myself and had tremendous value in, and particularly with some clients that I've worked with, just to shift their perspective and actually create that space. And it's so freeing, that work. And I I wonder if we could give the audience just, I know you've done this a million times, and I'm sure it doesn't, that is you serving this beautiful mission. But I wondered if we could give our audience a short example as to what inquiry looks like with those questions, and definitely invite them to go to thework.com and check out. You've got some great tutorial videos, which are just so easy to follow along with.
Yes.
But an example that I wanted to see if we could utilize this, because this is something that's come up for a client of mine who appears to be trapped in, that story. And I wondered if you could explain his story that he is currently sort of really trying to move through, is that he really doesn't believe that he deserves success.
Yeah.
So I wondered if we could use that as a potential example as to and utilize the work.
Well, first I would ask myself, is it true that I don't deserve success? Now, first, I'd have to define success, because if it's just all over the map, then I'm not even close to what I want. I'm imagining that success is a good thing, but I'm not sure I want it. So first I might question, I want success, and define it. If he's talking about money and position and power and all those things, he'd have to define it. And or if he's just interested in freedom, that would be another definition of success. So I don't know so how would you define it, knowing him?
So let's say,
for your listeners.
I think for him it's, of course. So this would be more related to business success. So I would assume success in business, financial success, wealth creation. Let's use that as potentially the definition.
So I don't deserve to be wealthy. He may want to look at it that way, or if he has more in that package of what he thinks of when he sees success, just stay with, I don't deserve success. So the question is it true that I don't deserve success? And then I've got to shift this. Where I would go with this with him is, I want success. Is it true? Just straight up, because it's money, it's business, it's like that. That's what we're pointing to here. So I want success. Is it true? And that, there's a lot that's entailed in that. Like, I want success. Is it true? What a question. Can you see everything in there? I mean, how much is in there?
It's a lot.
And especially if you have a family.
Yeah.
It's a lot to consider. And especially if you already have a job. I want success. Is it true? It's a huge question to sit in. And then I want success. And then just to close your eyes, just meditate on this next question. How do you react? Or I'll say it this way if that were my thought. How do I react? What happens when I believe the thought, I want success? Okay, so I meditate on that, and I see that my mind compares me, unsuccessful me, with all those wealthy people. I see them, they're in their suits, and they're empowered, and they're lecturing, or they're getting in they're going up their elevator in their very own building, and and then I compare it with me who has no success. Okay, so you see those images, there's all those successful people, and then there's me. Now, people with fabulous business, Fortune 500 businesses, do exactly the same thing. And it's not fun. The mind compares. That's how the ego That's how the ego works. So I just am meditating on how I react when I believe the thought. I see all those successful people, and I see me, and I am not looking good, and that's depressing. And then I see me trying harder and harder. I see me failing and failing and failing when I believe the thought I want success, and I witness that, and I see my money's running out, and I see what I've invested, and I'm really. Then I see me trying again. I want success. So I explore that. And that is so telling. No wonder I'm exhausted at night. That's
Yeah.
that's emotional, and that's going on all the time for people who want success, and for people who want more success that are already, the world would say, you're successful, stop now. But that's not how it works. You believe you want, I want to be more successful. So so then that fourth question, who would I be without the thought, just meditating on that, who would I be without the thought I want to be successful? Without that thought. And then I would examine my life minus that thought superimposed into my life, and just meditate on that. Then I'd turn it around. And for your audience, we're just going through, is it true? How do you react when you believe the thought? And who would you be without it? Just those questions. And then we find opposites. I want success. Turn around, I don't want success. Okay, so what does that mean to you? Open your mind. What does that mean to you? And that's radical for someone who has been worshiping, I want success. And we learn that as children, in its own way. So I don't want success. Okay, let's see, that would be time away from my family potentially. I don't want success. Oh my gosh, it would require me to hire and fire and on and on. And I mean, I just see this onslaught coming on me. And maybe that's okay with me. But it's also showing me what I need to be successful. I mean, there's a whole list of things here. And it's like a blueprint for what you already know and didn't know that you knew. And then you start interviewing people who are successful, or for people who work for successful people. And you start to learn, you start to grow. And when that stuff is inside of you, you're being educated because your mind's open. I mean, there's no limit to where just sitting in just one concept. There's no limit to where it can take you if you really get still and sit in inquiry in those turnarounds. And I don't want success. And it could be that you just laugh and say, I want no piece of that. I have without that thought, I have an amazing life. Some people really do, and because they believe they want the success, it wipes out their awareness that they already have success if their goal is a happy life. So all kinds of options in there, and we find what we find, but it's self-education. And we're tapping into that wisdom all the time when we get still like that. It shows us.
And do you find that it's more difficult for the people that you work with and you take through this experience when they have had like an actual past experience? Or is it just the same? Is it really just the same no matter whether they've had an experience where, say,
you mean if they had all that,
if
they had all that success and they lost it? You mean they had all of it? Okay.
That's what I mean.
So it would be exactly the same. It would be exactly the same inquiry. Because, when you get to, I want success, is it true? And they sit in that, they go, wow, no. It could just, or they might go, yes. And then you just move to the next. How do you react when you believe the thought? Depression,
and
frustration.
Yeah. And I guess something that just popped up, and I think I'd need to probably meditate on this myself. But since we're in this conversation, I'd love to ask it of you. And do you believe any of your thoughts, or is it just, do you choose to believe the thoughts that are empowering, coming from that place of love?
Well, I can't choose to believe a thought. I either
Okay.
do or I don't. So that's really relieving. That's a relief. I don't have a choice whether thoughts come through and I believe them or I don't. No choice. And if they depress me or separate me from another human being, or they're hurtful in any way, they go against my heart basically. Then I put them on paper, and that's my meditation for the morning. Or I just do it, or I just do it right away.
So I just want to, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit deeper into that. Like I said, I need to go away and meditate on this, I think. But so we do not have a choice as to believing our thoughts or not. It just
not as they're happening.
not as they're
We
happening.
believe
And then
them.
that's-
We believe them, or we question them. There is no other choice.
Okay. And well, all right. Yeah, I definitely need to be meditating on that. That's my work for after our call today. And I wanted to ask you another question about, how could somebody, and I'm sure it will be the same process, but how could somebody battling sort of suicidal thoughts move and transition into a state of joy or end that suffering from that place?
I suggest to people that they just start with moments in time that recur to them, with mother, father, sister, brother, just the basics, worksheets on those moments in time that were so sad or hurtful, or sad or hurtful. And just do worksheets on them. Just start there, and depression lifts.
Because it's sort of, they're in that position where they're looking to end their suffering on the physical level.
Yeah, well,
whereas your work
that doesn't work. It doesn't work, and here's why: there's no one to realize that they don't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
And I was so suicidal, and all those years, and I didn't figure this out until much later, after the depression. But if I had killed myself, who's there to realize it? I'm not there to realize it. So what good does it do? And there is a way through those wanting to die, and the way out is to go in, and that's my experience. And I have worked with many people in these last 28 years, and it's the same for them.
It's wonderful. And I wondered if you could talk into how we could use the work specifically in our relationships and enhancing those relationships. And I wonder if you could give an example either from your own life or the lives of the people that you work with, in terms of how they have gone from an ego-driven relationship to a truly loving relationship. Well,
to first realize that the person you live with, that person, that relationship that you pointed out, that's, I'll just put it from here because it's my experience, that's my teacher. The people I live with, or my partner, let's say, is my teacher. So anytime I'm angry at my partner, or frustrated, or feel hurt, I judge my partner, write it down, ask for a question with every complaint there, and I turn it around, and it lightens it lightens the identity I put on my partner. So when I see him as innocent. I see him without that post-it that I had planted on him. And so the people we live with, they are our teachers. Everything in life is to wake us up. The people in our partnerships, our romantic relationships, the people in our lives, they're there to wake us up. Every catastrophe in the world is about waking up. Everything is. There's nothing that isn't. If I break my arm, it's to support me to wake up. Whatever push needs to happen, happens. And we all need different pushes. We need to lose arms or legs or a partner, or we need our car repossessed. Whatever it is, it's about waking us up. And when I discovered that, this inquiry is the fast track.
And Katie, are you still waking up? Do you still have those situations occurring in your life?
Mind is infinite. It's infinite. It's infinite. It's an unending, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful experience. There's nothing to stop it. It doesn't get stuck on, he doesn't care about me, I need this, I want that, or there's something wrong with you and there's something wrong with me. It doesn't get stuck and dwell on those places when it's awake. It just is free to continue to create out of this just pure, what I love is a happy life without end. And, freedom is our birthright. It's for everyone. And anyone with an open mind can question what they're believing, because it keeps us stuck in the illusion of time. It keeps us stuck in time. It holds us back.
And do you think of us as, part of what I've gained value from that inquiry, and particularly when I do the turnarounds, is sort of owning everything within me, instead of separating different traits within myself and witnessing different traits in another person and generating a disempowering belief. And would you say that part of coming to that place of freedom and open-mindedness is accepting, say, that we are all things? Every single one of us is everything?
Well, if it comes out of my head, that's the moment it's created. And if I don't love it, I can always question what I'm thinking and believing.
Beautiful.
And if people,
if
people are tell me something, then I understand that's where they're at, and I understand that from experience. And but I'm very aware of my own. And that's the one that matters. And if it's not working for me, it belongs on paper so that I can question it. And for your audience, when I say write it down on paper, what I mean is that's where the thought is stable. Like if I had the thought he betrayed me, I would write that down, because the ego will want to shift and say, that's not what I really meant. It really is more like, and like that. So it stabilizes once we write it down, and then we carry it with those 4 questions and turn around all the way through, and we can always do the others later.
I love that. And, I had a question that I really wanted to dive into with you, and I'm now starting to question what I'm trying to question you about. And I really want to run this by you. And it's really referring to religion. So at the moment, obviously I'm from Australia, but I'm here in the States, and I'm in Salt Lake City, and it has got a really high population of Mormons. And I'm really I'm going to the churches. I'm really expanding my mind and my awareness as to what they believe, like getting in their belief system so that I can gain this better understanding. And one thing that I have found that I need to do the work on is feeling sorry for some people who feel like they are trapped, because I'm hearing experiences from them where they are starting to question the belief system that they have grown up in. And I wondered if I could ask how you would respond to somebody, say they came to you and they were in this religious belief system their entire life, and they've gotten to this point where they have asked questions of the religion and the beliefs, and they've gotten to a point where they've constantly been told, have faith, don't question, have trust, have faith. And they have so much internal doubt and turmoil and suffering based on not feeling limited in their ability to question. So I wondered, how would you help and support somebody who was in that position in their life where they want to question, but they feel trapped by that reinforcement to not question?
No one has to question what they think. It's, this is, it's not mandatory. No one has to do that. And everyone has their own path, and every path leads to the same place. So ultimately, that's just how it is. But if someone came to me, I offer inquiry because that's what's worked for me. That's my path. So when people come to me, they're aware of that, and so I would just have them fill in a judge and neighbor worksheet on a situation having to do with anything, and if it had to do with a church, then to put their thoughts down on what are they thinking and believing about the church or its people. And then we would go through inquiry, and it would bring them closer to those people. They would they would remain in the church, or they wouldn't. That's not the point. But they would be closer to those people. They would not be confused or hypocritical or worried. They'd be, we don't leave the people we love. Like the people in my life, I don't leave the people I love. They can leave me, but I don't leave them. In my heart, everyone is welcome, and I'm very well aware of that. But I understand when people oppose me because they're believing their thoughts about me. And so I understand all separation from experience. But, it's always, for me, when someone comes to me, it's a judge and neighbor worksheet. But I don't, when we sit in the questions, there's not a goal other than to see what is really true for that individual and to keep me out of it. And, it's otherwise, what value is it? It is the truth that sets us free. And ultimately, it, for me, freedom is like being brought to love, and there's nothing outside of that.
And I'm getting from you that it's in our questioning that we get to love. So our questioning builds the connection, and it is our lack of questioning that creates that separation and comparison.
Yeah, and love. I think it could be that everyone has a different definition of that. So that's something that everyone has to look to for themselves. I like the word happiness because it's something that it's more relatable to us, and on that Judge Your Neighbor worksheet on thework.com, it's on statement 4, it's in that situation, what do you want, in this case, the church for that person, what would make you happy? What do you want for what you need from those people or that church or that religion to be happy? And then you list your thoughts there and you question them and turn them around, and it really is there's a great experience of love there in that entire worksheet as we sit in it. But it brings us together with the world, and we're no longer at war with the world and what they believe. expand because they're always teaching me. I'm responsible for what I believe. And it's like I didn't believe on purpose, but I can identify what I believe when it goes against my heart, and I can question it. And that's been the process, and it's a beautiful process.
It sure is. And that just brings me to a question that one of our audience members wanted to ask you. From Brian, he said that he's heard you speak into defensiveness as the first act of war. And he wondered if you could elaborate.
Yeah, defense,
Yeah.
I often say defense is the first act of war. So, and I still see that that's so in my life. So if someone says, Katie, you're wrong, then I take that in and we can have a discussion. If I'm not aware of what I said or did that was wrong to my own mind, then that person can point it out to me. So that's a discussion. So now we're discussing it, and it's something that I can identify with or I can watch out for. And so we've had a great discussion when we resolve it that way. And it leaves us both open. But if we look at the same thing, someone says, Katie, you're wrong, and I say, I'm wrong. You think I'm wrong? How dare you say that to me? You're the one that's wrong, and that was rude. I was just stating my point of view, and I have a right to that. Okay, so who started the war? It was me. Defense is the first act of war. All they said is, Katie, you're wrong. That's all they said. And who started the war? How dare you? How dare you judge me? Well, it was me. I started the war. So it's not in the first, it's in the second. And when we look to ourselves, it's in the first. I started the war.
And is that what you refer to as sort of the person who came to you and said, Katie, you're wrong, as sort of, being either the student or the teacher? Do you ask the question, okay, tell me more about that? What does that mean? Or
well,
you get defensive?
If I can see clearly where I was wrong, then we can both have a good laugh, because, I can say, oh my gosh, I did. I'm sincerely sorry. And how can I make that right with you? And we laugh and we go on, and I make it right where I can. So there's no stuck place. There's it's not this a place where mold grows and resentment and bitterness and shriveling the next time you see that person, or gossiping about that person. It's all about growing and not getting stuck. And inquiry is a harmless way. There's nothing to believe or not to believe in it. It's all about awareness.
That's beautiful. I'm sure he'll really appreciate your elaboration on that as well. And another question that we had from another follower, Alexandria, she actually wanted to ask you about empaths, and she wanted to know, how can an empath connect with others but also keep themselves in a good state with so many others' energies and motives and emotions swirling around the relational atmosphere? So how would you sort of term that in terms of somebody who identifies themselves as an empath?
I think there's I discussed this in A Mind at Home with Itself. I'm sure I do. But if I think I know what you're telling me something and I'm feeling horrible, and you're being just authentic and sweet and dear, and you're in so much trouble, and I'm experiencing that as I work with you, then that is just all about me. I am thinking I know how you feel. And when I work with people, I know I don't know how you feel, that I can only imagine how you feel. So in that, I can just rip myself to shreds if I weren't more aware that, if I'm sitting with you, it's about how can I help you, rather than how can I just sit there in my ego thinking I know what you really feel and what you really think. And it's so subtle we don't even know we're doing it, and it can just wipe out a beautiful teachers, just burn them out. But so I suggest inquiry. I recommend inquiry, and just to know yourself a little more deeply. And when you know yourself, you know that you don't know. And that don't know mind is my favorite. When you understand the universe is friendly, you never need to know anything ever again, and the mind is open, and all the direction in the world is in that mind, and it's a beautiful mind, that don't know mind. It never has to worry or project a future. It understands that this is a beautiful world, and it's given to us and to wake up to. But what we're believing about the world could use a little work.
Yeah. And I definitely see so many of us suffering because of who we're identifying as. And I wonder, if somebody asked you, Katie, to tell them who you are, how would you answer that question?
Oh, I answer it from the birth certificate, Byron Kathleen, and my marriage certificate, Byron Kathleen Mitchell. And people don't just say, and do you believe it? So, I'm like in the world, but not so much of that world, I guess you could say.
It's an interesting thing to ponder, I think, because we have so many things that we identify ourselves as. And
well, if I question really myself, I can have the birth certificate in front of me. I'm Byron Kathleen. Is it true? And just sit in those 4 questions and turn around. It will blow your mind about who and what you really are as compared to who and what you think or believe you are. Those are 2 different worlds. Those are one is the world of imagination, and the other is pure grace and knowledge. Just pure creativity.
Yeah, most definitely. And Katie, it's been such a pleasure getting to connect with you. And I do have a final question to ask you, but before I do that, I would absolutely love for you to share with our audience out there. You did mention that you've got a book that's about to come out, A Mind at Home with Itself, and you've got your website, thework.com, where people can access the questions for inquiry. Is that best for people to connect with you and dive further into your work? Is there anywhere you'd like to direct our audience?
Well, I think that's the best way. And the work, of course, is in A Mind at Home with Itself as well. And people who have read the book ahead of publishing are they think it's an important book, and that's the only way I can talk about it. And so the work is there, and how to do the work, for those people listening now that don't want to wait for that book, just go to thework.com. And also we have certified facilitators on thework.com that are in the practice. And they're there, and they speak so many different languages, and they're so precious and so good. And so you can have, also we have a free helpline where you can call. You don't have to give your name. You just call, have a worksheet written and ready, and they'll do the work with you. And it's a beautiful gift that these people offer.
It's wonderful, wonderful. And the final question that I have for you, and it might seem funny and whatnot after our conversation, but I wanted to ask you, if you could instill one belief into the minds of everybody in the world right now, what would that belief be?
That if you're suffering, there's a way to end that suffering. And that way is to identify what you're thinking and believing that is so powerful about yourself, another person, and write it down and question it.
That's beautiful, beautiful, Katie. And I just want to just acknowledge just how beautiful this, last hour has been to just share this. And I feel my mind has expanded already. And I am sure that the audience, everybody listening, would have got so much value from what you've shared with us all today. And I just really want to show some appreciation for the work that you do and have done and continue to do in the world. It is completely life transforming, and it gives people access to true happiness in their lives. So, so much appreciation for you.
And I'm coming to Salt Lake City soon.
Oh, I know. I'm thinking about extending my trip so that I can make it.
Do you know the dates on that event? Anyway, it's on my calendar at thework.com for those people who hear this before the event and are interested. And I'm very excited about that. It's like going home again. I love going to Salt Lake City and
perfect.
So
beautiful. It's such a beautiful place.
Yes,
I know you like the mountains. I'm currently looking out over the mountains, and it's a special, special place. So I will have those dates all linked up for our audience so that they can check that out and definitely get in touch with you and the work that you're doing in the world. So thank you so, so much.
Thank
Katie.
you, Vanessa, and thank you for your efforts and contribution in making this a beautiful world.
Oh, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.